And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing. Yes.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue. Want to say peace and blessings to everyone that's tuning in tonight. Appreciate you guys for taking time out of your schedule to watch this session of the playbook. Really appreciate you guys. I started a little early because of some other things I have to work on for a presentation tomorrow. But wanted to do a lesson on Red Summer, and I want to deal with the Elaine Massacre. Want to really delve into that a little bit more, just to share more information with you and give you more to talk about. I know we see you on television, as far as on the news, and we see a number of media outlets mentioning Tulsa. Some will label it as the Tulsa Riots or the Tulsa Massacre, or whatever you want to label it. But it was a war that was declared on our people. And I want to show you that, especially when you study history, that this wasn't an isolated incident. I want to talk to you about Red Summer, but I really want to delve into one of the locations, which is Elaine. We want to deal with Elaine, and then what I'm going to try to do is take you on a tour to different locations of our communities that was completely obliterated, to show you that there was an all-out war. It should not be labeled the race riots, because we didn't do anything. We didn't provoke that situation. That situation was brought to us. It was a massacre, but we should take it a step further. It was an all-out war on our communities across this country. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and give some shout outs here before we get started. And forgive me if I miss your name, but I want to say peace and blessings to Jacob. I want to say shalom to you. Appreciate you. I want to say salama to Darnell Blackshear. I want to say shalom to BDT. I want to say peace and blessings to you. I want to say Shalom to you, Joy. Appreciate you for tuning in tonight. Tyrone Smith, want to say shalom to you. Appreciate you. Gumbo, want to say peace and blessings to you. Want to say hello to you as well. Janae, want to say shalom to you. My buddy Jay Highstyle, want to say peace and blessings to you. And thank you for the words of encouragement. We'll really appreciate it. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate you, Doctor. Uh, Ashley Just, want to say peace and blessings to you, geeks in the building. This is one of the geeks that's in the building. Appreciate you, Ashley Just Souls. Appreciate all with you, all that you're doing. Thank you for your support. Appreciate you. Let's see here. Patrick Daniel, shalom to you. Nicole Levels, shalom to you. Son of Yahweh, want to say salama to you. Paradigm shift, absolutely. Want to say shalom to you. And let's see here. Lemeria Johnson, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, want to say shalom to you. House of Judah, want to say shalom to you as well. Let's see, who else do we have here? Want to say shalom to apply the pressure. Yeah. Peace and blessings to you. House of Judah, peace and blessings to you. Angela, let's see here. I thought I saw you here. Angela Caraway, want to say peace and blessings to you. Majestic Tribe, want to say peace and blessings to you. Want to say shalom to you as well. So we have a lot to cover, family, and I'm not going to prolong getting into the lesson. And I appreciate you guys for taking the time out of your schedule to watch this presentation, and I encourage you to really take notes. This is great information to share with your family, your children. This is history we need to understand. Let's see here. I need to know how to join this ministry, and send me an email. I know I haven't had a chance to check my inbox, but send me an email, and I will check it. Actually, I'll check it tomorrow. If not, one of the elders, which I'll take a look at it tomorrow, and we'll respond to you. We'll send you a response email, and we'll reach out to you tomorrow. Just send us an email. The email should be listed below. If not, I'll correct the what you call it, the ticker at the bottom with the, oh, there it is. Yes, it is in there. So I was going to update the ticker. So it's we are woke now at gmail.com. And for anyone else that would like to be connect with our ministry, feel free to send me an email, and I will get back on top of it. I've been preoccupied with a number of other things. So again, I appreciate you. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this lesson here. Let me maximize the screen here. And some of you guys are going to already know because I've already covered it, but I want to cover some of it before we get to this portion of the text, before we get to this portion of the lesson. Again, we have a lot to cover here. And the only way we are going to be able to move forward in our us as a people, so to speak, in order for us as a people to move forward, we have to accurately understand our past. We have to stop giving blank checks, or should I say excuses, to the politicians, give excuses to the president, give excuses to people who are misrepresenting us as a people, who have no clue about our history. And many, again, default to Tulsa, Oklahoma, but they will not speak against what I am getting ready to present to you. I have some other things I'm going to share, especially as I do the road to Savannah, that's not going to be included in this presentation. But this is information we should know. We should not allow others to dictate to us and tell us what our history is. So let's go to get started. I want to make this clear. Redemption, Gala or Gaal, so Gala or Gaal, however you want to pronounce it, can only come through Yahweh Elohim's outstretched arms and his great judgment. I'll say that again. Redemption can only come through Yahweh, his outstretched arm and his great judgment. Yah, the Father, he is our Redeemer. Family, do not allow these non-Messianic people from within our community and those that are not within our community try to or make attempts to trip you up by saying, hey, the Most High said in Isaiah that he is the Redeemer. He is, some other things that they put out there, that salvation comes only through him. Guess what? They're right. Our Messiah never claimed to be sent on his own, that he just took it, just decided to jump into this flesh on his own. He continuously made reference to the will of the Father. He even said the doctrine that he teach is not of his, it's of the Father. We see it play out throughout Scripture. Every time Israel needed to be redeemed, the Most High always sent a messenger to be his mouthpiece. So don't allow many of these guys that their purpose is to try to use these little catechisms, so to speak, to try to trip you up. Don't fall for that. All right. So Yah, the Father, is our Redeemer. He's our Redeemer. So through Yah, who is the author, who is the one that put this plan together, the Father, his Son, the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, and of course we have to have the Holy Spirit. So through Yah the Father, his Son, the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, is our ransom. So ransom comes from the primitive root word pod, right? At the top you see pod yan or padayan. So ransom, padayam or pod, the primitive root, means to release, preserve, deliver, let them be redeemed. When you read the book of Judges, every time Israel went into a captivity, we see the common theme that the Most High raised up a deliverer to redeem his people. So don't fall for the little tricks and the little bullet points that many will use to try to, convince you not to believe in the Messiah, to try to get you to they cast doubt, to cast, put a little leaven, on your spirit to shift your belief in the Messiah. All right. So let's go to Mark chapter 10, verse 45, and let's confirm it here. It says, for even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life his life a ransom for many. His life a ransom for many. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5 and 6 says this, for there is one Elohim and one mediator between Elohim and men, the man Yahushai HaMashiach, who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time. Let's confirm this with Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5 and 6. It says, but he was wounded. And this is another thing that they would try to, many of those non-Messianics would try to trip you up. They'll try to say King David. They'll try to say that Hezekiah. They'll try to say, even Jeremiah. They'll refer to these guys as being the Messiah. That this is what the text is referring to. So do not fall for those tricks. All right, moving forward. So it says, but he was wounded, halal, for our transgressions, pashai. He was bruised, daka, for our iniquities. In other words, bending and twisting the law. He was bruised for us continuously bending, twisting, and distorting the law, statutes, and commandments. The chastisement, masar or mawasar, of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes, chabarath, we are healed. Para, rapa. Let me read it one more time. It says, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. In other words, bending and twisting and distorting his law, statutes, and commandments. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes, we are healed. And we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And Yahweh hath laid upon him the iniquity of us all. So let's deal with the consequences. So the consequences for Yah's people continuously operating in error, in sin, bending, twisting, and distorting his law, statutes, and commandments. So the consequences is Deuteronomy chapter 28, beginning at verse 16. So again, for those that are not familiar, if you really understand Deuteronomy is a series of instructions that the Most High gave to the generation, the descendants of the generation that died in the wilderness. So now he's getting ready to hand them the covenant. And in Deuteronomy chapter 7, we see we could call it an ordination service, or the transition, the handing over of the guard, so to speak, of the Most High, giving the covenant to this generation. So Deuteronomy chapter 27 is where you would see this at. You'll also see the actual curses, right? No, on Deuteronomy chapter 27, you'll see the curses, right? And understand this, family. There was no chapters, there was no verses in the Holy Scrolls, right? So it's easy. That's why you will see many when you read the scriptures. Oftentimes you'll see thoughts started in one chapter, continued on over into another chapter. It's because there was no order, there was no structure in terms of putting these numbers and verses there. So I believe it was the 12th century when the chapters were created, and it was the 15th century, I believe, starting with the Gideon Bible, if I remember correctly. That's where you saw the verses added. So it was there to make it easier for you to navigate through the text. So Deuteronomy 28 is a continuation of Deuteronomy 27. So the consequences in the ordination service, so to speak, starts in Deuteronomy chapter 27. So the curses is listed in chapter 27. You see the 12 curses. Then when you flip over to Deuteronomy 28, it starts with the blessings from chapter 1 through chapter 15. Now from chapter 16, verse 1 to verse 15, and from verse 16 to verse 68 is where you see the consequences. So the consequences in Deuteronomy 28 is Yahweh Elohim's great judgment to a disobedient nation, which leads me to Red Summer. No man shall buy you. So again, Deuteronomy 28:68. I encourage you guys to watch the previous lessons on this as I really go in on this, but I'm not going to do it here. This is more of a refresher for those that may not have watched the others, or may have watched the one I did a while back, and for those that are watching this video for the first time. So this is so that way those that haven't watched the previous teachings, this will help bring you up to speed. All right. So Deuteronomy 28:68. And this is the verse that many will try to use to, in their minds, trying to prove and discredit our people of being the people of the book. This is part of their playbook. All right. So it says, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So again, it says you will be offered, or you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies. So in an attempt to avoid Yahweh's judgment, the Most High's great judgment, Israel will attempt to enter agreements with Egypt. Israel will make attempts to enter into agreements of the very people, the very countries, the very nations that have come together to form a confederacy to blot us out. It says to put the 83rd book of Psalms says to put Israel's name, to make sure it's no more. In other words, to wipe out our identity. So in an attempt to avoid the Most High's great judgment, Israel will attempt to enter into agreements with Egypt to circumvent the judgment. So let me give you an example of this taking place. Some of you may remember this, but this will serve as a refresher. But let me show you here. It says Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1 through 3. It says, "Woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, and walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth." So now Israel is in a situation because of the Assyrians, the threat of the Assyrians, because of Israel. Again, like the ongoing theme throughout the book of Judges, again, Israel sinned before the Most High, went against his laws, statutes, and commandments, began to bend, twist, and distort, which simply means iniquities, the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. So the Most High, again, think about how much of a slap in this face is, or total disrespect of the Most High is, that Israel want to now go to the stronghold that the Most High delivered them from, and use that stronghold as a form of salvation. This is why Israel was called an evil congregation. When you get to Numbers, I believe, chapter 15, because Israel complained against the Most High 10 times. But this particular time was this was the last straw, right? 10 times redemption. The Yod, outstretched arms, means that they no longer trusted and believed in the redemption, the plan, the redemptive plan of the Most High. In that chapter, Israel decided that they were going back to Egypt, that they were going to replace Moses. That's why the Most High said enough is enough. And we still see that playbook today. Many of our brothers and sisters, as a matter of fact, I'm not even going to just say within our community, but we see this, all those that have enslaved our people, replacing the Messiah, and want to take us back to Egypt and give us a Messiah that's after them. Not the Messiah of the Most High, the true Messiah that was birthed through our heritage. The blood that's in his veins run through our veins. So now here we have Israel is doing the same thing again. They not just want to go back to Egypt, but they sent delegates to Egypt to enter into an agreement. So that walk down to go to Egypt and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. The shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. This here is making it clear that Egypt has no power. So Israel is trusting in the power that Pharaoh and Egypt don't have, and said this will be Israel's shame. So Yahweh Elohim pronounced a woe, a strong warning of judgment on the rebellious people of Judah, because they continued to refuse his help. Time and time again, our people rejected the Most High. and our hearts became hardened towards him. A rebellious Judah formed an alliance with the Egyptians. And so Judah was facing a great threat by the Assyrians, as I mentioned earlier. And so the leaders believed that the nation's only hope was to form an alliance with Egypt. So what is hope? Taqwa or taqwa. This is the ancient pronunciation of it. What is hope? Because Israel their hope went from being in the Most High to being in Egypt, which means that hope, every last one of us have hope. But the question is, what's on the other end of your lifeline? So this is what hope means, as you see here: a precept, statute, decalogue, pentateuch, right? But we also see here, it says law, direction, instructions. That's what it means. But let's take it a step further, right? And this just reiterating what I pointed out: instructions, directions, law, directions, instructions. Okay. So hope literally means a cord. Hope simply means a cord. Hope is interchangeable, synonymous to lifeline. This is what it means from the Oxford Dictionary definition of this word: a thing on which someone or something depends, or which provides a means of escape from a difficult situation. This sums up the behaviors of Israel, right? They took their lifeline and connected it to the Egyptians, hoping that this will give them or provide a means of escape from the judgments of the Most High. That's what a lifeline is. We see this taking place over and over again. Many people are placing their lifelines into all kinds of things, including the leader. We're not supposed to idolize any leader. I remember I grew up in the Baptist church. You had so many people within the church that I grew up in that refused to let anyone pray for them outside of the pastor. Some had to go to the hospital. I remember witnessing this, passed out of town, did not want anyone to pray over them but the pastor, and would wait till the pastor got in from out of town. Your lifeline, every last one of us have a lifeline. Every last one of us have hope. But the question is, who or what is on the other thing, or the other side of your lifeline? Like the show The Weakest Link, how they had lifelines and they would call that lifeline to try to get them out of a tough situation. In most cases, that lifeline was useless when you're dealing with people. Anything outside of the Most High through his son, guess what? Anything outside of that, it's not a lifeline. Actually, it's not going to produce what it should produce. It's not going to help you. It's not going to provide a means of escape from whatever situations that you're dealing with. So again, all of us have a lifeline, but who's at the other end of your lifeline? Some of you on both sides of the lifeline. You done made it into a loop and brought it right back to you because you did run well, but who hindered you? Right now, many people lifeline, as I see here, absolutely Darnell Blackshear. Many people place their lifeline in the president of the United States and politicians, Democratic, Republican parties, all kinds, and really don't understand history, fraternities, sororities. What's at the other end of your lifeline? And Freemasonry, they call it your cable tow. What's at the other end of your lifeline? So entry number 2 says this: a rope or line used for life-saving, typically one thrown to rescue someone in difficulties in water, or one used by sailors to secure them to a boat. So who or what is at the other end of your lifeline, family? Let's continue on to Isaiah chapter 31. And this is where the Most High really makes it plain on the behaviors of his chosen people. Isaiah chapter 31, verse 1 through 3. There we see it again. Woe to them that go down, Yarad Yam. So this is, when you see the plurality of this is a continuous process. This is not a one-time thing, but this is continuously. They're going back and forth with it. We're going down into Egypt, whether it's to negotiate whatever agreements that they are doing here in this text, but this is ongoing back and forth. So woe unto them that go down to Egypt for help, Azarah, and stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very ma'ad, strong, atazam, or atzam. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek Yahweh. Let me read it again. Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help and stay on horses and trust in chariots, because they are many, and in horsemen, because they are very strong, but they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek Yahweh. Verse 2, yet he also is wise and will bring evil and will not call back his words, but will arise against the house of evildoers and against the help of them that work iniquity. In other words, bending, twisting, distorting the law. See, that's the key. See, you could tell when someone is trying to go back into their past, trying to go back into their strongholds, is because they will begin to bend and twist and distort the word of the Most High to justify doing so. So Judah's hope was not to be found in the military might of Egypt, but rather in the power of Yah. So the key, what was the backbone of the Egyptians' army Yah destroyed? Their chariots and their horsemen. Let me say that again. The backbone or the special forces of Egypt was their chariots and their horsemen, as we saw and we read in Exodus chapter 14. So Israel is seeking salvation from the Egyptians because of their special forces. See, many of our people are seeking salvation from the different special government agencies of this country and other countries. See, when you start looking at the creation as a form of salvation, now you have a problem. Think about this. Think about how different things pop up and we start treating it like a form of salvation. And I'm not trying to knock anyone about the Bitcoin and all that other stuff. I'm not getting into all of that. But many are viewing that as a form of salvation. I mean, doing all kinds of pushing of this cryptocurrency and get mad at you if you decide that you don't want to be part of that scheme. But nevertheless, we have to be careful of not making our house into a form of salvation. Our education as a form of salvation. It's a tool, but it's not a form of salvation. The military is not a form, it is not a form of salvation. It's not your savior. I want to make that clear. There's a number of different things that many use and embrace like it's going to be the end all be all, even like a job. Like the job is going to be the job that you're hoping to get, it's going to be the answer to it all. No, anything that's you put above the Most High is an idol. Like that old special ed song that, in reference to when we think about the Most High is supposed to be the highest title, not the idol. Actually, not a good example. I was going to say special ed, I'm the idol, the highest title, the numero uno. Nah, because the Most High tells us not to make any graven images of him. So the Most High does not share spaces. But anything that you place above him is an idol. Anything that you may try to mix with him is an idol, because the Most High doesn't he doesn't like roommates. All right. So Israel again is seeking salvation from the Egyptians because of their special forces. Isaiah chapter 31, verse 3 says this. Now the Egyptians are men, Adam, and not God, right? Elohim, which transliterates to God. We need to, so many of you guys take this and make notes of this. So when you hear 5% is you be God, or the Kemet community, you be God, or the black man is God and all this other stuff, you take them right here, because I know the spirit behind it, the way that they're teaching it. Now the Egyptians are men and not God, not Elohim, and their horse is flesh and not spirit, because Israel idolized the Egyptians' special forces. Remember, this is the same special forces that the Most High destroyed when he delivered his people out of Egypt in Exodus chapter 14. So here, apparently, their special forces, Egypt, recovered. And now Israel is seeking salvation by entering into agreements with Egypt. But it says this: when Yahweh shall stretch out his hand, Yod, both he that helpeth shall fall, and he that hopeth shall fall down, and they all shall fail together. So again, now the Egyptians are men, they are not the Most High. Israel had to be reminded not to worship and idolize the Egyptians. They needed to understand this in the now, right? The immediate, because we see here the etymology of the word now. It says here, now, at present, immediately, now that, all right? And we see the Proto-Indo-European word new, right? But anyway, so Judah had to be reminded of their past, of what they had to deal with, but in their present, in other words, in their now, they had to understand the errors of their ways, that the Egyptians have no power, and will not redeem them. So Judah had to be reminded that in this present time, immediately, that the Egyptians are simply men. They are not the Most High. Last point I want to make is Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 21 through 23. It says, son of man, I have broken Shabar, the arm, Zarawai, or Zawai, however you want to pronounce this, of Pharaoh, Paraiah, or someone say Parai, however you want to pronounce it, not getting into all of that. But son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and lo, it shall not be bound, Chashab, up to be healed, Rapawath, to put a roller to bind it, to make it strong, to hold the sword. Let me say this again. It says, son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and lo, it shall not be bound up to be healed. Put in a roll, in other words, a splint, trying to heal it, trying to put it back in place, to bind it, to make it strong, to hold the sword. But notice this prophecy, because in verse, as you see here, it says, I will break, right? So notice what it says here. Let's go back here. This says, I have broken, past tense. Here, verse 22, it says, here, I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and will break. So one is giving you the current state or the past state of saying, I have broken. Now, this is telling you that the Pharaoh, right, the Egyptians' army recovered. And now the Most High is saying here, and will break. In other words, his stronghold again. I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and will break his arms, the strong, and that which was broken, and I will cause the sword to fall out of his hand. Family, I'm reading this text just to show you that, guess what? Egypt doesn't have power. The power that Egypt has is what you give it. That's what Jeremiah was expressing in Jeremiah chapter 10 when Israel was bringing trees into their homes and performing all kinds of sexual rituals underneath it. He was saying that, hey, these trees don't have any power but what you give it. These strongholds doesn't have power over you unless you give it to it. Verse 23, and I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations and will disperse them through the country. So the Egyptian, right? Egypt, the nations, existence was not blotted out, but their control and authority over Israel was removed forever. I want to make this clear. When you look at Exodus chapter 14, their special forces was destroyed, but Egypt's existence still continued. And the Most High made it clear that Egypt would not have authority over Israel ever again. But Israel keep voluntarily giving them the authority, giving them power. And we're dealing with spiritual Egypt right now. So Egypt's reputation is connected to Israel because they held Israel in bondage. So when we go to the NIV version of Deuteronomy 28:68, and this is what many would use to try to come against our community. This is the NIV version, and I'm not an advocate of the NIV version. I just want to make it clear. And none of the modern transliterations of the Bible or our holy text that come by way of the Alexandrian manuscripts. Right. So it says here, Yahweh will send you back into ships to Egypt, will send you back to ships. Let me read it again. Yahweh will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you shall never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. No one will redeem you. So I want you to make sure you make a note of this part as we transition to Red Summer. So you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as indentured servants. And here's the kicker. Indentured servants is a person who signs and is bound by indentures to work for another for a specified time, right? Military. Many have gone into the military. Many have gone into the military looking at it as a form of salvation. But I'm going to show you here how our community continuously have been deceived by every aspect, every function, every part of this government. I could deal with other governments around the world, but right now we're dealing with this government. Especially when you think about what happened on January 6th, the insurrection. Look at how that was handled versus how our people have been handled. Look at how what we're going to deal with today, how they handled this right here versus what happened on January 6th. You will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as indentured servants. No man nor his system will redeem you. So let's deal with Red Summer. I like to call this the war. The War of Red Summer 1919, or the Red Summer War, because this was an all-out war. Let's deal with the Elaine Massacre. And I want to paint a picture here, really walk you through and paint a picture here so you can really understand what's going on here. So you can really envision, paint a picture in your mind about what happened to our ancestors. And here you see in the background, this is a map of Phillips County. Notice what it says, map of the killing fields. And notice how you see the marks here. There was far more, but notice here you see the marks, the killing fields of how they slaughtered our ancestors. So let's delve into this more. Let's really paint a picture here about this particular territory, Phillips County. All right, Phillips County, which is bounded on the east by the Mississippi River, which separates it from the state of Mississippi, on the south side by Desha County, on the west side by the counties of Arkansas and Monroe, and on the north by Lee County, all rich Delta land. The general section was commonly referred to as the Black Belt, since there was a high concentration, of Negroes, many of whom were sharecroppers and tenants on numerous plantations found in that region. And so in 1910, the county had a population of 26,354 Negroes and only 7,176 white people. Thus, about 78.6% of the total population was Negro. The land was devoted to the raising of cotton on the plantation system. The land was owned by the whites, and most of the labor was performed by Negroes. So 78% of this community was being controlled by 22%. Still happening today. Still happening in our communities today. That a handful of people is running our communities. So again, 78.6% of the total population was Negro. October from the 1st through the 4th of 1919, this reign of terror lasted 4 days. 5 whites and 11 Negroes were reported killed, although the numbers were much higher on the Negro side, much higher. As you can see, this map alone, even though it's even higher than what you see on this map that's in the background here. So I'm just quoting from a source that I have here. So what events led to this massacre? Now understand this, between the time of planting and selling, the sharecroppers took up food, clothing, and necessities at excessive prices from the plantation store owned by the planter. It was not a practice of the landowner and sharecroppers to go together to a market to dispose the cotton when was ready. Right? So understand this, family. When our ancestors, when slavery ended, right? When slavery ended, our ancestors didn't have any place to go. Many of them had no place to go. So the landowners, they came up with a scheme. Their scheme, they entered into an agreement. Now, you're going to see here, our ancestors entered into an agreement and was betrayed. They entered into an agreement, and the agreement would normally play out is that our ancestors were able to stay in those slave shacks, right? But they're supposed to be a partnership of the landowner and them, for them to work the fields, and they would split the proceeds. They'll split the profits. But it didn't work out that way, because the landowners began to operate in very deceptive practices that will always keep our ancestors in bondage. So it was not a practice of the landowner and sharecroppers to go together to a market to dispose of the cotton when the cotton was ready. So this is telling you that the landowners went by themselves. They went to the market. So our ancestors had to have complete trust that they are going to be honest with what they said the cotton sold for. So rather, the landowner sold the crop whenever and however he saw fit at the time of settlement. Neither an itemized statement of accounts owed nor an accounting of the money received for cotton and seed was, in most cases, given or shown the Negro. So our ancestors had to take them at their word. They were not provided a statement or proof on what was sold, how much it was sold for, who they had to completely trust in the landowners. So the total amount owed was just stated to them. They would just tell them, hey, this is how much you owe me. And the Negroes then given a settlement, which was inevitably short. They were basically told that they owed. They was always in the red. So this, again, This is part of the curses. Deuteronomy 28:31 says this: thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine donkey shall be violently taken away from thee, from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. No redemption. So this practice kept our ancestors in debt to the landlord, right? Let me break down this term landlord. Let me break this down. Let me give you the spirit of the landlord. So when you think of landlord, let me break it down. Lord, Baal, right? Baal of the land. Baal ha-aratazah. But Baal, let's see what Baal means. Notice what it says. Husband, but here's the key. It says owner, often used with another noun. So in many of like the different communities, like the Babylonians, right? They had the Baal of the air, the Baal of the earth, the Baal of the fire, the Baal of the water, the Baal of the darkness, the Baal of the cold. They had Baals over a number of different things, as you see here: archer, babbler, bird, captain, chief man, confederate, have to do, Baal, right? So you also have Baal over the land. I'm going to show you how the landlord comes from the word Baal of the land, and I'm going to show you the spirit that's associated, right? So owner often used with another noun. So Baal means owner, right? So Lord of the land, owner of the land, Baal of the land. So let's go to the Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology. Let's define this word Baal. Let's give a little more information on this word Baal. It says, an agricultural and fertility deity of Canaan, turned into a fallen angel and a demon. Many minor deities of ancient Syria and Persia carried the name Baal, which means the Lord. The greatest Baal was the son of El, the high god of Canaan. He was the Lord of life and ruled the death rebirth cycle. He engaged in a battle with Mot, in other words, death, and was slain and sent to the underworld. Let me make this clear. The Most High is our Elohim, right? Not El, but Elohim. But even then, because I know many of you guys say El or Elohim, and I'm going to do a teaching on this, right? Our ancestors did not use the word Elohim, right? But we'll deal with that another time. But nevertheless, in Canaan, this is not our Israelite brothers and sisters. Canaan, these are many of the countries that was already occupying the territory. They were worshiping these idols, these different gods and goddesses. So I want to make this clear. So you see here, the Canaanites worship Baal by sacrificing children by burning, all right, passing them through the fire in honor of Moloch. Remember, we talked about that for the Halloween series I did. So this makes it clear that this is not the Israelites. According to the Zohar, Baal is equal in rank to the archangel Raphael. I'm not getting into all of that because now you get into Jewish mysticism. So I'm not getting into all of that stuff. And as you see here, Baal is the first of the 72 spirits of Solomon. And where this come from, the 72 spirits of Solomon, because in witchcraft, you'll hear them refer to the 72 spirits of Solomon. Well, that is based off of a pseudo writing that was written in the 4th century called the Testament of Solomon. It's not a book that was written by Solomon. It was written by some unknown writer, but that book was written in the 4th century, 3rd, 4th century, well after Solomon's existence. So I want to just give you a little clarity on that. But notice what this says here. He is triple-headed, right? Now you start thinking of what the word Trinity, because that word Trinity, triune, trinitius, that is not only used by the church. The church uses that term Trinity. Other countries, other communities, other nations had the term Trinity. Israel didn't never use the term Trinity. The Messiah never used the word Trinity, never made reference to it. So he is triple-headed with a cat's head and a toad's head on each side of its human head. He speaks hoarsely and imparts invisibility and wisdom. All right. So again, landlord means Baal, or owner of the land. Okay. But I want you to understand this part, right? See, indirectly, we can get caught up in spirits that we have no clue about, right? Our ancestors, not knowingly, right? Our oppressed ancestors, not knowingly, operated in the spirit of Beelzebub in an attempt to make ease of the situation with the Baal of the land, the landlord. Let me show you why. Who is Beelzebub, right? Coming from that same source, prince of demons, originally an idol of the Canaanites, right? Notice we still dealing with the Canaanites, the many gods and goddesses that they had. Means Lord of the Flies. The name is a distortion of Baal-zebub, the Canaanite or Phoenician god, meaning Lord of the divine abode, Lord of the heavens. See, Beelzebub manifests either as a gigantic fly, a gigantic ugly fly, or as a monstrous being of great height on a giant throne. In his latter guise, he has a swollen face and chest, huge nostrils, horn, bat wings, duck feet, a lion's tail, and a covering of thick black hair. But here's the kicker, and this is the area I want to just really highlight here. Beelzebub has been a feared and formidable demon from the earliest accounts of him. He was the prince of the demons in Hebrew belief at the time of Christ, right? I'm going to show you. It said the Pharisees accuses, let me read that correctly. I'm getting tongue tied. The Pharisees accused Jesus of exorcising demons in Beelzebub's name. For according to belief, the power to expel unclean spirits were gained through pacts with demons. Now, the reason why I said our ancestors were indirectly operating in the spell of the spirit of Beelzebub, because they began to enter into pacts with other demonic forces, thinking that that was going to circumvent the judgment. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you the demonic forces, the demonic things that they began to indulge in, trying to circumvent, trying to fight and take a stand for their rights, take a stand to make sure that they no longer get hustled by all of the land. All right. And this is why the Pharisees said that the Messiah, they tried to say that the Messiah was the reason why he was able to cast out demons, because he entered into a pact with Beelzebub. All right. So fraternities and sororities will not redeem you. And I'm going to show you here. This is what our ancestors were dealing with. Let me share. I'm going to explain. Right? Fraternities and sororities will not redeem you. You have fraternities and sororities all around. Guys, it's like we're in the Matrix. You'd be surprised where fraternity, how far, how much, how the depth, how deep these different things we see around us, the agencies around us, the communities and organizations around us are operating in the spirit of the fraternities and sororities, ultimately Freemason. So fraternities and sororities, Freemasonry will not redeem you. Our ancestors had to learn this lesson over and over again. The answers so that, the reason why these guys, our ancestors, operated in the spirit, because they thought that they would be able to circumvent the situation. They thought the answer, so they thought, lies in the appeal of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America. So again, the answer, so they thought, lies in the appeal of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America. So they thought that the unions was going to be going to be able to solve their problem. Notice here, to give you more history about this union. And all unions follow this template here. Lodges of the union were established from April through August at Ratio, Elaine, Hoopspur, Old Town, Ferguson, Countess, and Melwood. The objective of the union, composed of Negro farmers and laborers of both sexes, was to advance the interests of the Negro morally and intellectually, and to make him a better citizen, a better farmer. See, you see the brainwashing here? Our people formed a union based off of a Masonic order, right? I'm going to show you here in the next slide, a Masonic order, in order for them to become better citizens. So our people are striving to be like the very people that are murdering and slaughtering us, that's put us in this situation, raping our children, raping our wives, raping our fathers, and just raping our people as a whole. But now they are here trying to circumvent the judgment. They are operating in the spirit of Beelzebub, because now they are actually trying to use Freemasonry to be their answer. So the union had been organized in 1918 at Winchester, Arkansas. The articles notice what it says, the articles of incorporation being Williamson and Williamson, white attorneys, and filed in legal form. So they helped form this union for them. And here's the foundation. The union was a fraternal. Notice what it says. The union was a fraternal and social organization modeled after Masonic groups with a religious and biblical base. See, guys, no matter how you may attempt to try to sprinkle the Most High word on idol worship and on Freemasonry and other things, it's still evil. And that's what many would try to do. Sprinkle the Most High name on things that they're indulging in, that they don't want to let go. So the union was a fraternal and social organization modeled after Masonic groups with a religious and biblical base. There were officers, dues, application forms, membership cards, and special rallying songs. Provision was made for a salaried deputy whose duty was to organize other clubs in the country. Over the local clubs, also called lodges and orders, was the Grand Lodge of the Union, also referred to as the Grand Order. You see the Freemasonry? They were practicing Freemasonry. I can tell you they were practicing Freemasonry even before they formed this lodge. Its purpose was to further advance the cause, uniting the race into a perfect union in various counties. The Grand Lodge had power to levy special taxes on subordinate lodges for the purpose of purchasing land for the union. Twice a year, the Grand Lodge was composed of 3 delegates, right? Twice a year, the Grand Lodge composed of 3 delegates, right? Similar to what you would see in the lodge: the worshipful master, the warden, the junior warden, and the senior warden, right? Or you could say not a warden, excuse me. I got it mixed up. You have the worshipful master, the warden, the secretary, And you also have the Tylosaur, which that was the person that watched the door. But the three main people, the worshipful master, the warden, and the secretary. But they have they are modeled after the lodge, after Freemasonry. The promotive literature of the Union made its appeal to Negroes to affiliate by quoting Bible passages. Guys, remember when I did the lesson on the glow? Notice what's happening right here. Quoting Bible passages and asserting the need for economic justice and social equality. Aren't we seeing these same things that are pushed in our communities today by these politicians? Each applicant desiring to join the Union had to undergo an examination and answer under oath such questions like this. This is what they had to answer under oath. Do you attend church? Do you believe in country? In other words, this country. Wait a minute. See this contradictory behavior here? Do you attend church? The very system that have enslaved our people, Christianity and Catholicism, enslaved our people. The people that was robbing and stealing these landowners, they were Christians. They called themselves Christians. You know, these people that was lynching them were called Christians. The KKK, they call themselves Christians. But here it is. We're sitting up here using this as a way of pledging to the very system that have what? The very people that have enslaved us. Do you attend church? Do you believe in country, in this country, the very country that have now we're going to see shortly after how this country treated them? Do you believe in God? Well, what God? What God are you referring to? Because our Most High, our Most High would not permit us to enter into these agreements, would not allow us to go into these secret societies. And it goes on to say, will you defend this government and her constitution at all times? You see what you see the contradictory behavior. So I'm sure when they say that, when they're teaching about the church here, I'm sure they were saying that we don't have to, we're not under the law, that we don't have to honor the law. We don't have to honor the law, statutes, and commandments. But here they are making a pledge to defend this government and her constitution and her covenant and her agreement at all times. This literature was also characterized by an official tone, as if the Union was sponsored by the federal government, right? Like this Union is being backed by the government, the way that they was pushing it to our ancestors. So the Negro leaders pledged through their Union that they would defend the United States, defend the covenant of the United States. That's what the Constitution is, the covenant of the United States. So what does pledge mean? Pledge simply means collateral. I'm just going to sum this portion up. I don't have to go deep into this. It simply means collateral, right? Give your life, to give over as security for repayment, to put someone under oath. So when you're making these oaths, when you're making these pledges, you are pledging your life as collateral. The Hebrew definition of shield, magan, shield, a protector, defense. So magan, right? So you pledge your life to carry what? Their shield, right? That's supposed to be a form of protection for you. So remember, every shield has a set of laws which can only be carried by those who pledge their life to it. So the beginning of the war called Red Summer is what I want to get into now. Now I laid out the foundation of what transpired, what led up to this war, this 4-day war in this particular area. So between 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., right, they are meeting in church, right? They are meeting in church with this union, with this Masonic lodge, because many churches, they are interchangeable. They're both the church and the lodge. Most pastors, especially in the Baptist and Methodist and the Presbyterian churches, they are Freemasons. So between 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., And actually, I could put in Kojic as well, not limiting it to those guys as well. Want to add a few others up in there. So between 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., the meeting was broken up by an exchange of gunfire between Union members in or around the church and men near an automobile. The men at the car were special agents W.A. Atkins of the Missouri Pacific Railroad, Deputy Charles Pratt, and a Negro trustee. Always have to have one of us supporting it, right? They claimed that they were going to arrest a supposed bootlegger who lived in the vicinity, and that their car broke down near the Negro church, and that they were fired upon by the Negroes. So they're saying their car broke down, just so happened in front of this church where they're having this union meeting, this lodge, this Masonic meeting. They while they were looking for a bootlegger, and they said that suddenly our people began to open fire on them. But notice what it says: Atkins was killed and Pratt wounded. The Negro trustee escaped unhurt and reported the shooting by telephone to Helena citizens. The Negroes at Hoop Spur reported that the white men fired first, right? Apparently to break up the Union meeting, and that they returned the gunfire. By early morning, the word circulated among the Negroes in the vicinity of Elaine that the whites were going to kill all Negroes. So now that because our ancestors retaliated, right? Now the word is out. Now the fear is out that you're going to have white lynch mobs killing our people. I want to highlight this article here. Forgotten History of America's Worst Racial Massacre, right? September 30th, 2019. I want to highlight this real quick. This is coming from the New York Times, right? And I want you guys to see the depth of just how bad our ancestors were treated. That there was an all-out war. This is coming from the New York Times. A Memphis reporter described events on October 2nd after the troops had arrived. Troops and vigilantes, he noted, went into the canebrakes in search of Negro desperados, leaving dead bodies lying in the road a few miles outside the city. Enraged citizens fired at the bodies of the dead Negroes. In other words, when it says enraged citizens, these are enraged white citizens shooting dead bodies, shooting the bodies of our slain brothers and sisters. Right? When it says troops and vigilantes, right? Troops, military, and vigilantes. In other words, white mobs, white lynch mobs, right? That was deputized to go at our ancestors, aka what happened to Jacob Blake when he was shot 7 times by the police officer. And you had that 17-year-old teenager go with a group of them, right? Going into our communities to police our communities and shot each other. He shot and killed and walked after killing someone, walked away with his gun in his hand, and the police let him go. Anyway, that's vigilantes, right? That's going all the way back to slavery when you start understanding Barbados. Anyway, not getting into all of that. I'm about to go geek mode, not trying to do that right now. But it says here, in search of Negro desperados, leaving dead bodies lying in the road a few miles outside of the city. Enraged citizens fired at the bodies of dead Negroes as they rode out of Helena toward, right, Elaine. Still, others describe the barbarism of cutting off the ears or toes of dead Negroes for souvenirs and dragging of their bodies through the streets of Elaine. You see what's happening here, family? This, the spirit of Egypt, right? That Revelation talks about dead bodies lying in the street. Even Tobit had to deal with that. Dead bodies being tossed over the wall, and he had to go bury. He decided to go bury his people, took it upon himself to bury his people. Still, others describe the barbarism of cutting off the ears or toes of dead Negroes for souvenirs and the dragging of their bodies through the streets of Elaine. You best believe some of these souvenirs still live in, still exist in some of these homes that have been handed down. You better believe that some of these people ate some of these body parts. Better believe this thing, aka or a la Sam Holt, who was lynched, burned at a stake, body dismembered and chopped off, and given away purchased body parts, souvenirs. So Gerald B. Lambert, the founder of Listerine, let me say that again, the founder of Listerine, who owned 21,000 acres near Elaine, saw white men. He bore witness. He testified the truth about what went on, spread throughout the woods, firing at any suspicious person. Doesn't this sound familiar? We still dealing with this. So let me go back here. It says here, again, Gerald B. Lambert, the founder of Listerine, who owned 21,000 acres near Elaine, saw white men spread throughout the woods, firing at any suspicious person. So they're going through the woods. If they see anything move, they shooting it. A steel gondola car was hauled back and forth on the railroad track, right? Now they're driving up and down the railroad, making sure that we're not trying to escape by way of the railroad, right? Remember Rosewood when they had to make their way to the railroad, trying to get on that train to get out of that city. See, that happened all across the country, family. And I believe Rosewood was Florida. So a steel gondola car was hauled back and forth on the railroad track, he said, adding, the men inside firing from the shelter of the steel walls of the car, shooting black people. He also told how soldiers, notice what this says, he also told how soldiers brought a suspected union leader to his company store for interrogation, poured kerosene over his body and tossed a match. In other words, lit him on fire, burnt him to death. So the account that best captured the perspective of the sharecroppers came from Ida Wells Barnett. So the War of Red Summer escalated, right? You see here, look at it. Look, these are some of the territories. These are some of the territories of where this war took place. Even more than what's on this map, but it's far more. It's not race riots. This is I would call it the War of the Red Summer War, 1919. That's how I would label it. So white men from other parts of Arkansas and from Tennessee and from Mississippi streamed into Phillips County to join the fight against what whites were calling the black insurrectionists. You see how we was treated? See a big contrast to what happened on January 6th? The Negroes made such a show of strength that the requests were made to Governor Charles H. Breaux at Little Rock to send federal troops. Wait a minute. You see what's happening? So our ancestors, they fought well, right? Remember, it was 27,000 versus 7,000. So we had them outnumbered. So a call was made for the governor to send in the military because they could not conquer these Negroes. They could not penetrate them. They could not overtake them. So they had to send in the military, right? So they sent in federal troops from Camp Pike. The governor accompanied 500 United States soldiers armed with 12 machine guns and other weapons, bombs and all those things. They're not going to tell you all the weapons. See, this happened a couple of years before Tulsa. So to Elaine and Helena, Elaine was placed under martial law, and the soldiers anxiously joined the fighting against the Negroes, all of whom were rounded up and placed in a stockade. Right? You have to understand, we were also a lot of our ancestors, especially when you start getting into the late 1900s, we were put in concentration camps inside this country. There was multiple concentration camps in this country. Over 120,000 of our free ancestors were put into concentration camps. They won't tell you that part of the history. So all whom were rounded up and placed in a stockade. The troops combed the area around Elaine for a radius of 50 miles. Governor Breaux was fired upon while following troops into the cane brakes. All right. So the Negroes were not only held responsible, because the common thing, we got blamed for this situation. They held us accountable. No Caucasian was arrested, but our people, even here, they arrested and forced all kinds of confessions from our ancestors. The Negroes were not only held responsible for the conflict, but they also suffered a much larger number of fatalities. From the very beginning of the riots, news releases, newspapers went out all around the world, blaming the violence, blaming our ancestors for the violence, and portraying our ancestors, like they still do today, as murderers, insurrectionists who had plotted to massacre the white population. Big difference, right, from what happened on January 6th. So again, you will offer yourselves to your enemies as indentured servants. No man nor his system will redeem you. Red Summer 2019. The next time we talk, the next place we're going to deal with when we come back is Knoxville, Tennessee. We're going to make some rounds here. We are going to make some rounds to cover some key places, so that way you guys can understand the things that have taken place towards our ancestors. Family, know your history. Know your history. A rabbi quoted and said this in laughing while he was giggling. He was giggling while he said this. He said, one thing you have to say about Black people. He said, they don't know their history. So we have to tell them their history. He said they have to tell us our history. So family, I hope this helps. We're going to stop right here. And feel free to subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Share the video. Share the video, family. Share it on your YouTube channels. Share it on your Facebook channels. Share it. Share it. So with that being said, family, in the words of the Most High that he gave his servant Moses, he said, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, these strongholds, this abuse we continuously go through as a people, being taken advantage of, being robbed, being murdered, bodies laying out in the streets. He said, you will never have to deal with this again. This Egypt, this spiritual Egypt, will not have power over you again. The Most High will fight for you, but you and I, and we as a community, we have to hold our peace. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.